Okay, so this is 61, I think, episode 61, right? Highway 61. You remember that? Highway 61? Bob Dylan, yeah. Great album. So yeah, so this has been a great week, and so Kathy has a bit of a breakthrough thing, which I want to talk about later on, or as we get rolling here. Um, do you want to just mention the gratitude list, Kathy?
You mean what I just told you?
Yeah. So you've been making this gratitude list now, what, every day for the last few weeks?
Every day for 4 weeks. I just have this little gratitude journal,
Okay.
and it asks me for three a day. And then at the end of the week, there's just a little like few questions about how the week went. And so um, the question every week is who made me smile. And this week I put the people in this group. And then who inspired me, and I put Anthony Hamilton,
Ah,
whoever that is.
whoever that is, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
if you
That
go if
strange
you
guy.
if you go online and do a search for Anthony Hamilton, there's all kinds of us around. One guy, of course, the most famous guy is this singer. He's usually the first person that comes up, and there's also a champion snooker player from England named Anthony Hamilton. Then, of course, there's me. But there's a lot of Anthony Hamiltons around.
So if you typed in to narrow it down more, if you typed in Anthony Hamilton author, it would probably bring you up
Yeah, that would come up.
to the top.
I think on Facebook I'm called Anthony Hamilton author, and a couple of other places, maybe Instagram, I'm Anthony Hamilton author too. But if you just do a Google search for Anthony Hamilton, I'll be down on the page somewhere. Usually what pops up is YouTube,
Mhm.
because I have a lot of YouTube
I typed in
videos.
Anthony Hamilton author, and instantly it's like a little bio about you and your book.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
Top of the
perfect.
page. Top of the page, baby. There you
Right,
go.
number one,
Number one.
numero
The
uno.
only one.
That's right. Well,
Ladies and
oftentimes,
gentlemen, the one and
apparently
only
there's
Anthony Hamilton.
apparently there's an Anthony Hamilton that wrote some books 100 years ago or something, and he
Ooh.
pops up sometimes. But anyway, maybe it was me. Maybe it was me in a previous life. A previous life.
Channeling him.
Who knows? Who knows? So I got a couple things I wanted to talk about this week, following up from last week and the last couple of sessions, right? One thing was that, and I mentioned this, I believe, last week, that when you get into this workbook process, after a while, meaning a few weeks, a few months perhaps, I mean, it probably starts right away, but over time, you become much more familiar with your future self, because you're thinking of your goals, right? What do I want a year from now? What do I want 6 months from now? What do I want, 5 years from now, let's say, right? So what happens is that your future self becomes a much more powerful concept in your mind and starts to communicate more with you, or at least you start to notice it more. And so one of the things that John Kehoe talks about, and we've used this affirmation before: my subconscious mind is my partner in success. And so one of the things I've noticed, and I've mentioned this previous times too, is that you start to notice that you become much more intuitive. In other words, this connection to your subconscious, and specifically to your future self, becomes much more noticeable in your life. And specifically when you're working on a project or when you're working on a goal, you start to notice, and you may have noticed this already. If you have, you can chime in. But what happens is you start to notice, you get these little voices, little feelings, little intuitions, coming in, which I think are a message from your unconscious, either the future self or some other part of your unconscious, because it knows what you want. You're focused on this. You made a decision. You have this goal. You want to achieve this thing. And so it's trying to figure out how to help you, and it starts to give you ideas. Now, have any of you noticed this? Yeah, you have, right? So it's pretty interesting. Now, one of the things that that happened to me this week, I put a new course together, and so what I do, because I learned this using this system of working in the workbook, is that when you start to fill out a page, let's say your past successes list, for want of a page. So you start to fill out your past successes list. Well, what happens is you start to remember more past successes. You're walking down the street or you're driving your car and your mind goes, hey, here's another past success, right? So that happens in the past or in the future too. What I do when I start any project is I start with a blank page. And I just, put the title of the project, whatever it is, down on the page. And then, I write down a few ideas and then I just forget about it. And then I anticipate, and it usually happens, that at some point, a day or a week later, I suddenly go, oh, here's another idea about that. So I write that page, I add it to the page. And then over a period of time, I might have a page filled up with ideas. And then I think, okay, it's time to, work on this project now. So I go to that page and, and I got 8, 10, 15 ideas down there, right? So I've been thinking about this course called the Confidence Switch. How to have instant confidence, right? Just flip the switch in your head and boom, instant confidence. So I've been thinking about this course. And so this week, I had a day free. So I thought, okay, on this day, I'm going to record the Confidence Switch, right? So I get the lights all set up and everything, for my recording. And then I go to the page in my workbook. Actually, it's on my computer now because I tend to transfer things from the workbook onto a Word file as often as not. So I open up the Word file for the Confidence Switch, and I was thinking, I wonder how complete this thing is, right? I wonder what's on this page, because I hadn't really consciously paid much attention to it. I knew that I was scribbling ideas on it. That was about it. Well, I was quite surprised. The whole thing was done. The whole script was written, right? So I was really surprised that it was that complete. And so I simply turned on the camera, and like in an hour, I had the whole thing done, right? Then all I had to do was just sort of, edit it, add a few graphics and stuff, and it was all done. So I literally had this course finished in like an afternoon. And now it's online. And so that is a byproduct of using this workbook where you have a project, you have a goal, you're thinking about it, you're writing down ideas about it, and they just add up. Pretty soon you reach sort of critical mass, and you have enough ideas that you can figure out your plan and you can move ahead, right? So that's pretty exciting. Kathy?
Yes. So now, do you have an idea for a project, and then you create a specific page for that project, and then that's where you start recording ideas for that project? And then do you also just have a page for like just ideas for projects? Like,
Yes,
okay.
yeah, I have both. So,
Okay.
so lots of times if I get an idea for something, hey, I'd like to do this, it might be an idea for a book or maybe an
Mhm.
article that I want to write or something like that. And so what I always do is I just start a page in my
Mhm.
binder and I just start writing down ideas.
Okay.
And what I find is that the book, the page more or less fills up by itself over a period of time. And one way that I tell people to use that idea is to stick the page on the wall or on your fridge, whatever, right? If there's something that you want to get some ideas from or ideas about,
Mhm.
if you want to brainstorm ideas on a certain topic, um, take a page, like a loose leaf page. That's what I use. Now I'm using this square lined page, because
Okay.
it's easy to keep things straight, even though I never keep things straight. But
Mhm.
but if it's important to you, yeah, just take a piece of masking tape or something, stick it on the wall so you see it. You put it in the hallway of your house or your kitchen or your bedroom or something or your bathroom, and you see it every day. So your mind just, oh, here's an idea. I'm gonna fill it out, right? So that's what I do. And so I think, and I mentioned this last week, I believe, or maybe the week before, about fleshing out your future self.
Mhm.
Because when you first start to think about your future self, it's just a concept in your mind. And it might be very fuzzy, very, very nebulous. And but as you think about the future self, and I mentioned last week, what values does this person have? What are his main or her main beliefs? Do they have any rituals that they do every day? Do they have any practices or routines that they follow? What about feelings? What are the main feelings that characterize this person? Are they more generous? Are they kind? Are they forgiving? Are they well organized? Whatever. And you can do that in all 6 areas. So how do they relate to their kids? How are their relationships? How is their spiritual growth? Um, what about the physical health? Do they exercise? Whatever. What's their diet, right? And so the more little ideas, the more pieces you put into that future self, the clearer it becomes, and then it starts to become more and more real, and starts to communicate with you more. That's what I think happens.
Yeah, I think I'm at the very fuzzy stage. A couple months ago, I just, I think I mentioned in one of our meetings that I sort of had abandoned everything that I had previously set as goals and just really wanted a fresh start. Um, and really, I was very depressed and I didn't want to have any goals, or I didn't feel like I was too tired to have goals. I
Right.
might be a way of putting it. And I couldn't see myself having goals because I was just so deep in that darkness, I guess. But now I'm starting to get the fuzzy, like, oh, that I could see. So I'm in the middle of another course as usual, but I got to the 65% mark on the course. So then it got me thinking about the future, like, what am I going to do when I finish this course? And then I started getting ideas about building a course myself for our drivers where I work about, because the next course I'm taking is about sleep and recovery. And I'm thinking, could I make a course for our drivers at my work about how to get good quality sleep? Because it's really important for them as drivers to be alert and have good quality sleep. So things are just swimming around in my head, and it's so fuzzy, but ideas are just shooting at me. So
Yeah. Well, that's
they
right.
really
And
wanted to know, how do I record it?
well, what I use this, right? I have a voice
Mhm.
recorder on here. I'm sure you do too. And if not, you can always find one. There's lots of apps around.
Yeah.
So I use a voice recorder. I mean, the main thing is my binder, right? That's the
Hmm.
main go-to thing. But of course, any scrap of paper that happens to be around, if I'm sitting watching TV or something, which I actually don't do anymore, but um, I'll just grab a piece of paper and write down the idea on it. Now, the danger with
Hmm.
doing that, of course, is you might lose track of the paper or you might throw it out. That's
I
why
think I'll just,
having
yeah.
that's why having a page in your
I
workbook is
have
good. Yeah, exactly. It's good to
notebooks.
put it in
Yeah.
there. So you have to remember to grab those little bits of paper or those recordings on your cell phone, and at some point, go through them and make sure that you put them in your binder. And
Yeah.
and what you'll probably find, because I've found this many times, that your subconscious mind doesn't quit. You know, I mean, I've experienced this many times, and perhaps a lot of you have too, is that you go to the voice recorder, for example, to say, okay, I'm going to download my good ideas now from my voice recorder, right? Because I seem to get a lot of ideas when I'm driving the car. So I can reach
Hmm.
over, I can turn on my voice recorder, and I can record it, right? Well, what I might find is I've recorded the same thing 6 times. Like once a month ago, once 5 weeks ago, once 4 weeks, once yesterday, right? So it's like, oh, I didn't even know that, like my mind is going, hey, here's this idea, right?
Yeah.
So that can happen too. Jessica?
Yeah, so two things. Kathy, I think your idea is brilliant. Not only for inside your company, but I actually was talking to a client yesterday, and her biggest issue right now is sleep or lack thereof. So I think as a peri pre menopausal woman, sleep becomes an issue that has
Yeah.
never been an issue before. And I think you're onto something massive with that as a topic, for one. And second, I love Anthony's idea, but one of the things that I started doing, because I know you were working all day long, and that's when sometimes our mind can get into like, oh, these brilliant ideas, but we can't really break away to go write something down or whatever, but we don't want to lose it. I'll just open up an email to myself in my computer at work, and I'll just keep it open. And then as an idea comes up, I'll just quickly write it, type it in, and then, just keep it open all day. And then I'll send it to myself. And then I have it.
That's
And
a
then you
great
can just
idea.
copy and
Yeah.
paste it right into your Excel or whatever program you're using. So that's been like really, really helpful for me. So,
Yeah. I'm going to try that. I'm going to try the recording and the
yeah.
email because I hate to admit it, but while I'm working, I'm often not thinking about work. I'm thinking about what I wish I could be doing instead.
I see you. I know. I'm you too.
Yeah, all those are great ideas. I use email quite a
Yep.
bit too. I email
Yep.
myself when I get an idea because I know I check my
Yep.
email a couple times a day at least, right?
Yep.
Now here's another idea for you. What I would do if I were you, of course I'm not you, but I suggest you think about this. Go to your boss and say, hey, I've noticed that drivers are having trouble sleep, blah, blah, blah. I have quite a bit of education and I'm thinking of putting together a course so that drivers know how to get better sleep, right?
Hmm.
And watch his reaction. If his reaction is positive, like, oh, hey, that sounds like a great idea, then what I would do is say, do you think the company has any budget to pay for something like that? For, writing a course like that? See what happens. He might say, well, as a matter of fact, I'll talk to the HR people. They may be willing to pay if you create a course like that, right?
Yeah.
Then suddenly that's a lot more motivation for you to do this course.
Hmm. Yeah. I think he would be immediately probably positive about it, but we're in a corporate structure, so I would have to see, but that's a good point to talk to him first.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Just ask a question, like just
Yeah.
say, do you think the
Yeah.
company might have any money available to pay me to create this course? See what he says.
Yeah.
If he says no, then
I mean,
okay,
he may say,
forget
no,
it.
we have our own department for that, and they do their
Yeah,
own thing. So,
exactly. And that's
yeah,
that's what often happens, right? You approach
yeah,
people and they'll say, well, we have our own way of doing that, so okay,
yeah.
fine.
But then I'll do it anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah, why not? It sounds like, I'm sure it's a great idea. It's a great course.
Yeah.
And it would be a great exercise for you putting together
Hmm.
a course, right?
Yeah.
So,
My,
sorry.
my challenge is that I wake up like in the middle of the night with ideas. And it's like I mean, I said, oh, I hope I remember that when I wake up again because I always go back to sleep. So
Yeah.
that's a challenge for me. And then I forget about it. And then oh, yeah, I was going to do that or I was going to, but some things I remember, but
Well, that's why you need to have your scrap of paper and a pen by the bed, or maybe
mhm,
your cell phone, or maybe a voice recorder. I have a couple of voice recorders because before I got a cell phone, I used to use voice recorder, right? And I would
mhm.
just push a button and go. And occasionally I'd wake my wife up, but but usually I just, try try and because here's the thing, right? Um, your ideas are valuable. And I don't just mean valuable in money. I mean they're valuable for you. I mean it's your unconscious mind trying to help you, right? Your subconscious mind is your partner in success. So your subconscious mind is always helping you or trying to help you improve your life somehow. So those ideas are valuable for you if and I'm sure for other people too. So because if you don't write it down, the chances that you'll forget it are really high. Now,
Yeah.
it may come again, but it might be 3 months or 6 months before it kind of pops into your mind again. But I get some of my best ideas at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I think it must be because that there's a particular phase of REM sleep, right? That
Mhm.
um, taps in, taps into that thing.
When I worked in accounting and reconciling, doing a lot of reconciliation, I'd be looking for, do that all day. And if I wasn't successful in a certain thing, and then in the middle of the night, I'd wake up, oh, I didn't look here, look there. A lot of times I was right, meaning I found the solution in the middle of the night when I woke up. So
That's
it's
right. So
weird how
that
that happens.
so that proves that your
Yeah.
subconscious mind
Yeah.
is working under the surface, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Whether you want it to or not.
I
It's a
mean,
curse sometimes.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, we've all had the experience of like talking to somebody and saying, "Oh, I saw this show the other day with this great actor, and what's I can't think of his name, right?"
And
And then like the next day or maybe the next hour, you're driving home and all of a sudden, boom, oh, that's who it
mhm,
is, right? It pops into
mhm,
your mind. So that proves, at least to me, it's proof that your subconscious mind is paying attention and
mhm.
is and
That's
is
why I
and
always
is
joke when
helping
I
you.
ask somebody a question and they don't have the answer. I'll say, "Don't message me in the middle of the night when it comes to you," because it
Yeah.
does. Your brain doesn't stop
Right.
searching, right?
That's so
Right.
weird how that is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I was gonna comment on on what Kathy said last week because I was so excited when you had this breakthrough, right? And so I emailed you about it. And you said, "Oh, well, I didn't really think it was all that big a deal, but now I realize it is a big deal." So what I was going to say about it was, you remember when I talked about number one, shining my shoes, right? That was my big breakthrough, right? Shining my shoes. For Greg, I think it was buying a tube of toothpaste, and for you, it was cleaning your house, right? And so the reason I was so excited is because what that was, to me, what it was you suddenly realizing, okay, I can change this thought. I can change this thought, like it's going to be a lousy weekend, to I can make it a good day today by just focusing on how to make it better, right? So to me, if you read my book, and I can't remember where it is in the book, but there's some place in the book where I define what personal power is. And the book is divided in two. The first part of the book is called Discovering Your Inner Power, and then the second part is called Using Your Inner Power. So the first part is to discover it, right? And so what you did on last week was you discovered your power. And what your power is the ability to consciously change a thought, one thought, right? And so we have 50,000 thoughts a day. So when you first start getting into this mind power, change your thinking, change your life philosophy, a lot of people are interested in it and they sort of study it, but they never quite figure out this idea that it's changing a thought, right? Because the first question that people get, or the thing that they struggle with, is, okay, I believe it. I can change my thinking, change my life. What thought do I think? What thought do I change? Well, I don't know what thought it is for you. Same as you don't know what the thought is for me, right? But for you, that was one of those thoughts, right? Wait a second, I'm not, thinking that it's going to be a bad weekend. That's not a good thought to think. I'm going to change it. I'm going to say, no, I'm going to improve it, right? So for you, that was one of those thoughts. And for me, another one of the thoughts, which I've talked about many times, is the 1 minute goal. Like when I was trying to quit smoking, it was like quitting smoking, this big mountain, How do you quit smoking? And I tried and I failed and tried and failed and tried and failed, quit for a week, started, quit for a month, started, quit for 6 months one time and started, And it was like, whoa, what's going on here? So when I talked about this, I think I talked about it to Joe Vitale. At any rate, I asked my unconscious, because I realized that the bigger the goal, the less belief I had that I could do it. Like I said, how much do I believe I can quit smoking for a year? 0. How much do I believe I can quit smoking for 6 months? Well, maybe 2, because I did it once already, but it didn't work, How much do I believe I can quit smoking for a month? Oh, 3, 4, right? How about a week? Maybe 5, 6, So then I asked the magic question, which was, I asked the magic question, which was, how small does the goal have to be so that I feel 100% certain that I can do it? And the answer came back, 1 minute. Well, I thought that's a stupid thing, 1 minute, like who wants to quit smoking for a minute? I want to quit smoking forever, right? But I thought I'll try it, So what I realized was the cravings don't come all the time, which is kind of what I thought. I thought the craving to smoke was like this constant, like a constant hum in the background or something, from a machine. No, it was a thing that came and then disappeared and it came back in 10 or 15 minutes, So what I realized was I only had to stop smoking for a minute when I had one of those cravings. And pretty quickly I realized each time I deny myself one of the cravings and I don't smoke for a minute, I get a little shot of adrenaline, a little shot of confidence, a little shot of dopamine or something. And the next craving that comes, I feel stronger and the craving is weaker. And so when I set that 1 minute goal, literally within a few days, I thought, I got it now, because after 3 or 4 days, the cravings were like getting weaker. I was really confident that I could beat it for a minute, And so that, I think for you, Kathy, that was like one of those things. It was like, Okay, I can spend an hour cleaning my house and see what happens. Don't have to do it all day. Don't have to go crazy with it. Just do it for an hour or a minute, or I mean, you can't clean much in a minute, but that's the idea, right? It's like, hey, now I know what to do. If I'm in one of those moods and I want to change it, I just flip it, focus on something positive that I can do, and so that was so exciting when I heard you talk about that. That's why I said to you, this is a real breakthrough. Because when you discover that's what your power is, it's to say, here's a thought that I want to change. And then change it, and then next time you know what to do, right?
Yeah, now I feel like Wonder Woman just going pew, pew, pew,
Exactly.
knocking those.
Exactly. Go out and buy yourself a cape,
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's fantastic. And Greg had kind of the same thing happen, right? He sent me an email later and said, he said, I've been a part of your group now for a year. I'm finally starting to get it. And it's true, right? I mean, because at first it's like philosophy and, what's it all about?
Mhm.
Changing thoughts. We have 50,000 thoughts a day. What do I do? But then at some point you kind of go, oh, wait a second. Here's a thought that I can change, right?
Yeah, I feel like everybody does it at a different pace too. I've been watching the earlier videos when you and Jessica first started, and it's maybe because Jessica had already been like majorly studying this kind of thing, but she seemed to get it and action it right away. And for me, it's just been like slow, like little nuggets, like where I'm going, "Oh, okay, I think I kind of get what he's saying now," and where I maybe had heard those things before and read those things before and watched videos about them before, but I didn't really get it. So I'm just slowly starting to get it.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's how it is for everybody. I mean, that's how it was for me,
Yeah,
you know.
me too.
And I'll give you another example of a thought that I had that's exactly the same, right? We were talking about weight, losing weight, right? And I didn't really want to get into it because, as far as I was concerned, going on another diet was like one of those, not again. And so it was only when I got that intuition from my unconscious that said, what if you were thrown in jail for a month and you didn't have any contact with the outside world and they only fed you a little bit of food? Would you lose weight? It was like, okay, now I get it, right? But I'll bet if you could go back and listen to a recording of my life, um, I wouldn't be surprised if there were 100 different times when I mentioned to somebody, I need to lose some weight, and they might have said to me, just eat less. And it just went, and I didn't get it, right? Suddenly the idea of eating less was like, oh, this is what it means, right? So it takes a while. Yes.
I like what Kathy said about how like it's like little steps that build on each other, which points back to what you talk about all the time, which is spaced repetition, right? Like reading a book is great, taking a course is great, but what I think that I think the superpower that comes with this group is that we meet every week and we chew on things every week and we're constantly being reminded every week. It's the spaced repetition that this group provides that I think allows for those little, like, we don't have to absorb everything all at once. We can take and pick and choose the little bits that make sense to us in that moment, work on it, and then you're ready for the next one. So I think that's why this group is so powerful, personally.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. And you're exactly right. I believe it's exactly right. This is Paul Meyer, right? I learned this from Paul Meyer. The magic of spaced repetition. And so what I realize now, what I believe now, and I'm pretty sure it's scientifically proven to be a fact. Spaced repetition is what triggers neuroplasticity. So it's the same thing, right? You go to the gym once, not much happens. You know, your muscles hurt. That's it. You go to the gym 3 times a week for a month. Okay, you know, things are starting to shift. But then if you stop going to the gym, then you're right back to where you started, right? But you go to the gym 3 times a week for a year, probably your life's going to change, right? Because you're going to feel different, your body's going to be different, you're going to change your diet, you're going to change your self-image, you know. So I think that neuroplasticity is one of the keys too, is that you do it once or twice, and then if you forget about it, then you pretty soon you slip right back, you know. So I have another idea that I want to mention because I think this is super powerful. And that is that you remember a few weeks ago, I was talking about, I kind of came clean, right? I sort of revealed myself here, you know. I stopped, to some degree at least, I stopped pretending to be the expert, you know, and I told the story about how I basically failed out of high school, you know, and because I had this self-image of teacher's pet, super smart, wunderkind, you know, winning all the prizes in school. And then that was kind of snatched away. At least that's what it felt like to me. It was snatched away. And so I identified, or at least I joined the easiest group to join, which was the group of losers. You remember that story? Well, for about 10 years, I was a loser in my mind. That was my self-image. I've been ripped off. I've had my goals stolen from me, my destiny, being a university professor, all that stuff, which I had from that dream. I felt like it was taken away from me, right? And so I identified as a loser. This was my self-image. And so when I was telling that story, I said, I can remember being, it was around about the same age. It was like 10 years old. Because I remember I was in grade 5, I think. So I'd be like 10, you know, something like that. And I remembered sitting in my room and realizing, hey, I know how to make homework work for me. I'll just keep doing it over and over and over and over again until I get it, right? And so I got to the point where I would not let any piece of mathematics, and I also used it for other things, just like memory work, like history, you know. I would just repeat over and over again, you know, dates and battles and people's names and things like that until it stuck in my mind, right? And I realized if I did that, I could just win at all these exams. And that's what school's all about, right? It's about winning at the exams because that's how they test you. And so I became the teacher's pet. I became a star student. I won all kinds of awards, you know, for getting the top marks in all these various subjects, right? Well, after I told that story, this is a month or two ago now. After I told that story, I started to consciously identify with that young teacher's pet. You know, the young guy who had like all kinds of confidence. It's like, I got it now. I figured it out. You know, I figured out this whole school thing here. I figured out how to beat the system, you know. I can just study, focus, pass the exams, get good marks, and then everything from then on is rosy, you know. And then I forgot about that. So what I've been doing for the last, you know, month or two since I told that story is I've been consciously kind of meditating every day, identifying with that past self. Because how many past selves do you have? 1,000, right? How many future selves do you have? 1,000. So the trick is to pick one, right? So, or at least, you know, to narrow it down to one, right? And so I realized I could do the same thing in the past. So by identifying with that past self, the me that was a winner, teacher's pet, lucky, anticipated success, man, things have really shifted for me. The last couple of months, it's like things are just getting better and better and faster. And now when I set a goal and when I plan something, I just feel totally different. I anticipate, hey, I'm going to win at this. Which before I kind of had to struggle with. It was kind of like, is it going to work? Is it not going to work? Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? Now it's like, hey, it'll be great, right? So I think that's a key bit of insight there that I had. Jessica?
I'd love to add to that, because what I've been noticing with you over this year, basically, like the last 3 months or so, is that you have gotten, like, you ask for what you want. You're like, I have an idea and I'm going to go ask. And you've asked me, like, do you know anybody in the UK? I connected you with somebody. I don't know if that went anywhere or not, but like, it seems like you're just asking for what you want a lot more. That's what I've really noticed, right? Like Joe Vitale, that happened because you pursued it. You asked, you just came right out and said, I want to be on your show, right? I've noticed your growth through our group is that you have more confidence. You are now asking for what you want. And that's been what I've noticed of you in the last year since I've known you, but especially the last 3 months. So.
Yeah, thanks. Well, you're not the only person to say that. Several people have told me that, right? That they've seen a shift in me in the last couple of months. And so thanks very much. I appreciate that. And I'm going to tell you something that I have told you before. All of you. Class? Get yourself your own group. See, who's getting the most benefit? Who's getting the most benefit out of these calls? Right? I mean, we're all getting benefit, right? But I believe it's me. Now, maybe I'm wrong in that, but let me put it another way. I'm getting huge benefits out of meeting with you people every week, right? It's clarifying my thinking. It's giving me an opportunity to put together ideas, and which I'm good at, and sharing them with people, right? Sharing things that I've learned with people. And that's a huge privilege to have an audience. So I suggest all of you, I've said in the past, start a book club. To me, a book club is probably the easiest thing, right? Because people can recognize what it is. You think about starting an online, podcast or something, and maybe that's intimidating. It's something you don't know much about, right? Except that Jessica is a bit of an expert in it. But yeah, just start a book club. And it can be with one person, like Naomi was telling us a couple of weeks ago, right? You shared my book, I think, with somebody, or you told somebody about it. Has anything happened from that?
I haven't really reached out to him lately. I kind of, once I did, and he didn't really elaborate too much. So,
well,
but I started a book club with this other coworker and on another book. So you got me thinking I'm going to ease this book in with that too. So.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be my book. I mean, I think my book.
Well, no, I want to spread the word, and it's just hard. I mean, I don't have a way to articulate what we're doing to do it justice.
Exactly. Well, I've been trying to figure that out for the last year. And as a matter of fact, the reason that I changed the name of the course when I put it on Anthony Robbins' Mastermind platform, I called it the Personal Leadership Process, or the Personal Leadership System. Because it seems to me that that's as good a way to describe it as anything,
Yeah.
It's, personal leadership, right? It's like becoming our own leader in our own life, right? So, yeah, I understand what you're saying. And so to me, the key word is interest. In other words, if you're talking to a coworker, or a friend, it doesn't matter who it is, and you think that you're kind of kindred spirits there, and so you might mention, I love reading, positive thinking books, right? Like you're reading As a Man Thinketh, and so if you see a little interest in your friend, you can say, hey, would you be interested in, meeting once a week and just talking about our positive books that we're reading? And if she says no, then fine, forget it, you know. But
Mhm.
if she says, hey, that sounds like a good idea, then okay, let's do it. Let's meet on, you
Mhm.
know, let's, I mean, if you live close by, you can meet in a coffee shop, or you can meet online, you know. But to me, that's the key question is, are you interested in? And if the person says
That's a
no,
good point.
yeah, and if
Mhm.
the person says no, then, you know, forget it. Because the worst thing to do, you know, I mean, the worst, you know, the easiest way to lose your friends is to say, no, 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 this is a good idea. You know, you should read this
Yeah.
book. You know what I mean? We, you know,
Yeah.
we've all seen people that approach us that way, right? And that's the worst thing. We all hate that when it happens to us. And it's the
Mhm.
easiest way to lose your friends if you say, hey, man, have I got a course for you? Have I got an idea for you? You know, people say, I'm not interested, right? And so that to me is the key question. Would you be
Mhm.
interested in getting together once in a while and just talking about positive thinking? And if they say yeah, say, well, okay. Share your favorite book with me, and I'll share my favorite book with you.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, I've actually done this. So about a year ago, because I love this so much, I wanted to take it offline and do some stuff with my friends. And so one of my favorite people, Tanya, who's been on this call with us a few times, we started meeting every second week. We'd go and have brunch, and we'd sit and spend like 3 hours just chewing on interesting information and, sharing what we were up to and supporting each other and setting goals and holding each other accountable. And then we decided to add in another member and another member and another member. And now we have a couple of remote members. Kathy is one of them. And, and this is what we do every second Sunday. We meet and we have like when minds come together, the information, the ideas, it's blowing my mind what can happen. So I highly, highly recommend what Anthony's talking about. Like you don't
It's
even
good
know
to
what
know.
you're missing out on. It's
Yeah.
crazy. So yeah.
And
Mhm.
you only need one extra person, like one other person, right?
And
And
Mhm.
Tanya and I did it all by ourselves for a whole year. And it was so
Mhm.
impactful. And now we're called the Cheesecake Sisterhood because our motto is always eat the cheesecake because we always end our meals sharing a piece of cheesecake. So now we share it 4 ways and it's kind of just growing and it's awesome. Highly recommend it, Naomi.
Thanks. Yeah.
yeah, I think it,
Thank
I,
you.
I think it's really essential. I mean, it's what Napoleon Hill called a mastermind group, right? Two people getting together to share ideas about a common thing that they're interested in, right? Um, any other comments, questions?
I just listened to a book and it relates to this only in just a different flavor. It's called the Checklist Manifesto. And it is interesting. And um, what it is it just gave the history, like in aeronautics, the pilots have a checklist.
Hmm.
Well, the history of that, um, anyway, I don't need to go really into it, but then the guy who wrote the book was a doctor. And people just poo poo, just your checklists. Uh, from a medical perspective, a nurse started it because some nurses would forget to take the blood pressure. Some, if things got chaotic, something obvious would be missed. So they established this checklist, and it just spilled into other things. And it was so highly successful, meaning less people died, all of that, not because of more technology, not because of more, smarter doctors or whatever. It was just some basic, simple things that were on a checklist that they verified every time. Or, know your team members, introduce yourself, and then different things like that. And it's like, all right, now what is my checklist? And that I do that, like I do every day. And he gave the example of the checklist used when that plane went down in the Hudson, that pilot named Sully,
Right.
how that basically saved them. Just everybody knew what they went through the checklist before anything happened. Then something happened. They all knew what to do. Um, when it first started, there was a pilot. This was pre-World War II. A pilot took off in this brand new Boeing whatever plane, and it just crashed and burned. Well, come to find out, um, he just missed something. It wasn't because of his skills or whatever. So the Army bought the plane just to test it because Boeing almost went out of business because of that. That one test flight was such a disaster. All they did was implement a checklist just to make sure, did you do this? Did you do this? Or, is this, how the checklists are in those things. And it became the most successful plane in World War II. And they attribute to winning the war because of that plane. Well,
Wow.
they didn't change the plane. They didn't change the training of the pilots. All they added was a checklist. And it's non-technical, and it's getting everybody on board. It's communication. And so anyway, it was fascinating. It was very fascinating. So it's like goals. It's like it's team goals. Everybody has it's the communication of the same goal.
Wow,
I
that sounds
don't know.
that sounds like a fantastic book and a fantastic
Oh, it
story.
is,
The way you
yeah.
told the story
I just
it was
bought it.
brilliant.
I
is
put it
good.
on my wish list.
Oh
Me
gosh,
too.
that was good.
Me too.
Instant like that. Like I don't pass up opportunities to buy it. Like if someone raves about a book, I'm like on it quick, like right now.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
how I bought it too. I listened, someone said, "Oh yeah, I bought the checklist manifesto," and he barely even described it, and I had it bought and it's worth it. Meaning, I listened to it on the Audible tape, but I've started the second time. I mean, I couldn't. It is, but it relates to this. It's getting people in the same frame of mind, and
Yes, absolutely.
and
And yeah,
so
the
it
idea of
does relate to
checklists.
this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the idea of checklist is perfect. I mean, I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I
It
I
just
is really interesting.
I have a daily checklist, and just so
I'm not surprised. I love it.
I
I'm not
failed in
surprised.
this before because I set my so I've got 12 items, and they might seem very very simple. One is to drink water. One
That's
is
one
to
of mine too. Yeah.
take my
Yep.
vitamin, eat vegetables because I have a hard time with vegetables. So I have 12 items. Where I've sort of failed before is so learning is one of my items, but it had to be a half hour of learning for it to count. And on some days you get busy, some days you have less energy, that kind of thing. So once I started not doing a half hour, I would feel like I was failing and I would scrap the whole thing. What I'm doing differently now, and I've done 4 successful weeks, 100% every day, is I just learn. If it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, as long as I feel like, yeah, that's good enough to count for today, I can check it off. And so I've done 100% every day for 4 weeks, and it's gotten me moving on my courses. I'm walking every day, eating vegetables. So this checklist really keeps me motivated and going. I just had to lower my expectations a little bit and just go day by day. What if cleaning is on my list? It can be an hour, but if I do 10 minutes and that's feels good enough, I count it. So yeah,
Oh, for sure.
yeah,
the
It's all,
value of a checklist is it's
and
great.
it's the state of mind, meaning what it
Mhm.
puts you in. And so yeah, so this I think originates the checklist, meaning this type of thinking produces things like the checklist, I believe.
yeah. That's fantastic. I don't think it's actually lowering your expectations, but it's kind of changing the way you're looking at it for sure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is why I say work in the workbook every day, even if it's only 1 minute, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because what they've proven with neuroplasticity is that if you do something every day, your brain will change. But if you miss a
Mm-hmm.
couple days, then it doesn't change. So you can go for 2 weeks and then miss a few days and then go back and do 2 more weeks and your brain doesn't change, right? So it has to be consistent. And this idea of checklists, yeah, I mean, pilots always use a checklist, right? And you would think,
Mm-hmm.
well,
But
they
that
must
always
know.
wasn't the case. And so it's really interesting.
Oh, okay, yeah, well,
Mhm.
so maybe that's where it came from.
Yeah, it did. Yep.
I
Yep.
remember hearing a story about, NASA launched one of these missions to Mars a few years ago, right? And it crashed into the surface. Just boom! It was supposed to go into orbit or something, and just hit the planet, and and they spent billions on this thing in like a decade. That's what they do, right? And so anyway, they did. Of course, they did a big investigation to find out what went wrong. Well, what went wrong, it turned out, was some guy was calculating in kilometers and not miles.
Oh,
Mm.
And when I read about that, I thought, how could they make such a stupid mistake? But obviously, they didn't have a checklist, right? Somebody
Mm-hmm.
didn't say, hey, are you guys all working in the same system? Are you all working in kilometers, or are you all working in miles? If he asked that question, somebody might have said, "Oh, geez, I just realized."
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you're right, Naomi. If you don't follow the recipe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you leave something out of the checklist, you leave the sugar out or you leave the salt out or something. It's like, ugh, what's going on with these pancakes? And so yeah, having a checklist, having a formula, right? Same sort of notion. Yeah, that's fantastic.
thank
One of the
you.
things I noticed this week was that I started off having this idea about going to England, right, and having a trip. I mean, that was my first idea. Well, let's go to England, right? And then, the next thought was, well, hey, wouldn't it be great to do some public speaking there? And so, how do I do that? Well, I got that figured out now. I got a couple of people organizing dates for me, right? But in terms of planning, right? We've talked a lot about, designing your future, designing your life, and planning. And the idea is, of course, the more you think about it, the more detailed it gets, right? Well, this idea of going to England, it was just a notion in my head, right? It was just like a fuzzy thought in my head. But what I was doing the other day was I was sitting down, figuring out, okay, which train station do I need to get on which train at which time to go to this place to do this, and what address am I going to stay at when I go to this place, and how much is it cost for the train to go from here to here, and where do I buy the tickets. So what do they say? The devil is in the details, right? But if you don't have the details right, of course, then it's not going to work. So again, same idea as the checklist. It's like make sure you check everything, right? You don't want to get to the airport and realize, oh, I forgot my passport or I forgot my ticket.
I have this little mantra I go through every time I leave work or leave my house or anything. It's like phone, keys, wallet, good, right? Like it just runs through my brain. Like I can't lock my door like without like phone, keys, wallet. Like I gotta run through that every time. And it's
Exactly.
now it's a habit. Like it's just and it feels good. Like I can't get back into work when I leave because the door's locked. So before I leave, like I stand at the door with my bag and I visually imagine phone, keys, wallet. Okay, you can go.
Yeah, I do the same thing every time I leave the house.
Yeah.
Every once in a while I don't, and then oops, you know,
Mhm.
lock myself out. It's happened once or twice, but
Actually, if anybody wants a good laugh, there's an Adam Sandler video. I think it's called Phone, Keys, Wallet. I don't know, something like that. It's hilarious. Highly recommend. Go watch it. It's a good laugh.
I was watching a video the other day with Adam Sandler. He was being interviewed, I think, by Brad Pitt. They were talking, and he said, and Brad Pitt was asking him about this, that he was in acting school, I think, Adam Sandler. And at one point, the teacher invited a lot of the students out for a beer. So they went to the local bar and they were having a beer, right? and the teacher turned to Adam Sandler and said, I don't think you have what it takes to make it in this business. So, whatever it is, the spark, the technical ability, you just don't have it. So, I'm giving you advice here because I care about you and I respect you. And so what I'm saying is, find something else to do. Find some other way to make a living, right? Because you're just never going to make it in this business, right? And so Brad Pitt said, is that true? And Adam Sandler said, yeah, it actually happened, right? And he said, the other thing that I heard about you, and you can tell me whether or not this is true, that one day you were in a bar with a bunch of friends and you saw this teacher there. And so you introduced the teacher to your friends. And you introduced him as, this is the only teacher who ever took me out and bought me a beer. And he said, is that true? And Adam says, yeah. And he said, that's what I really respect, is that you said, he's the only teacher that bought me a beer. He could have easily said, this is the guy that told me I'd never make it, right? But no, he said, this is the guy that took me out and bought me a beer. So, great. Okay. Anything else? So this has been great, I think. Checklists.
That went fast. Wow.
It did go fast. Yeah. It did go fast. But I think it was great. It was to the point, right? I mean, what we're talking about here is kind of, in a sense, kind of mundane stuff, working in a workbook, keeping a checklist. But really, that's where the payoff is. Once you know what you're doing, right? Like I put so much energy now into this trip to England. Now the next thing is, okay, make sure I get the right ticket for the right train at the right day, because I'm going here to do a talk, right? I'm doing some
But
workshops.
isn't that a perfect metaphor for what we're all doing right in this class, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. The details, Okay, thanks everybody.
Thank
you.
Have a good week.
Good to see you again,
Bye.
Naomi.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thanks, Kathy.
Take care.
Have a good
Yep,
day, good
bye.
weekend.
Yep.
You
Bye-bye.
too.
For more information about this online community, to get your own copy of the book upon which this entire training series is based, either the ebook, the paperback, or the audiobook, go to mindtimeandpower.com, where you can also get a free copy of this Design Your Life workbook.